The day after my wife died, her kids walked into my house like it was already theirs. Derek set a folder on my kitchen counter and said, "We want the estate, the house, the land, everything." Tessa didn't even sit down. She just watched me, waiting for the widower to fold. Their lawyer added the knife. 30 days to move out. If you fight this, we'll drag probate, freeze accounts, and bleed you with legal fees. My lawyer begged me to contest it. He said I had rights. He said the paperwork smelled wrong. I listened. Then I told him, give them all of it. Everyone thought I'd lost my mind. At the final hearing, Derek and Tessa smiled so wide I could see relief in their teeth. I signed the papers. Their lawyer started reading the last page into the record, and his face drained of color. Because what they were about to inherit wasn't what they thought it was. My name is Jack Mercer. I'm 61, born and raised in California, and I spent my whole life measuring property lines for a living. I know what happens when people ignore what's buried under the surface. Now tell me, where are you watching from? And if your spouse's kids tried to erase you right after the funeral, what would you do? The house still smelled like funeral flowers and disinfectant. Not in a dramatic way, just in that quiet, humiliating way grief hangs around after the guests leave. The wreaths in the living room hadn't wilted yet. Cards were stacked on the coffee table in tidy piles, like sympathy could be filed and forgotten. Marilyn's favorite throw blanket was still folded over the arm of the couch, exactly how she left it. I didn't sit in my office. I sat in hers. Marilyn's little workspace was tucked off the hallway, neat as a pin. White desk, a small lamp, a ceramic cup full of pens she'd never thrown away, even when they ran dry. A framed photo of us at the coast, wind in her hair, my hand on her shoulder like I could keep her there if I held on hard enough. Everything in that room was small but clean, the way she liked life. I was staring at her handwriting in a half-finished grocery list when the doorbell rang. It wasn't the soft, uncertain ring of a neighbor bringing food. It was firm, confident, like an appointment. When I opened the door, Derek and Tessa stood on my porch, dressed in black, like they were still performing grief. Derek's expression was calm, controlled, his eyes already scanning behind me, taking inventory. Tessa's face was arranged into something that could pass for concern if you weren't looking closely. And behind them was a man I'd never met. Grant Fielder, their attorney. He had a leather portfolio and a handshake that felt like he was timing my pulse. Jack, Derek said, as if we were meeting to discuss a contract, not a death. We need to take care of some practical matters. No. How are you holding up? No. I'm sorry. No mention of their mother's name. Just practical. They walked in without waiting for an invitation. Derek took the seat at Marilyn's kitchen table like it was his right. Tessa sat beside him, close enough to feel united, far enough to look innocent. Grant stayed standing for a moment, surveying the room, then placed his folder on the table with deliberate care. Kitchen table takeover. That's what it felt like. Like I'd lost my wife, and overnight, lost my house to a meeting. Derek opened the folder and slid the first page toward me. We want the estate, he said. The house, the land, everything that belongs to the family. The family, I repeated. Tessa leaned forward, lowering her voice. Jack, Mom would want you to do the right thing. The right thing. As if the right thing was whatever made this fast, smooth, and profitable for them. Derek tapped the paper with one finger. The land on the edge of town. Mom always said it was supposed to stay in the bloodline. That's what she wanted. Marilyn had never said that to me, not once. But the way Derek said it, flat, certain, made it sound like a quote from Scripture. Grant finally spoke, his voice calm and clinical. Mr. Mercer, you're the surviving spouse. You have certain options. But the will and related documents reflect your late wife's intent regarding her children's inheritance. He said inheritance like he was saying delivery schedule. Derek pushed another page forward. We're not trying to hurt you. We're giving you a small life insurance payout. You'll be fine. Tessa nodded gently. It's enough to help you transition. Transition. Like I was changing jobs, like Marilyn hadn't just been buried. Then Derek dropped the number. 30 days, he said. That's fair. 30 days to do what? My voice came out quieter than I meant it to. To move out, Derek said. The house needs to be transferred, and we need to start managing the land. My ears rang. The kitchen felt too bright, too ordinary for what he was saying. Tessa put her hand on the table, palm up, like she was offering peace. You're Mom's second husband, Jack. We respect that. But you're not, you're not part of the blood. There it was. The blade under the velvet. Grant didn't even blink. If you contest, we'll freeze accounts pending review, extend probate, and you'll incur significant legal fees. That's not a threat. It's simply the process. Derek looked at me with practiced patience, like I was being slow on purpose. We'd prefer you sign today. He slid a pen toward me. For a second, I stared at that pen like it belonged to someone else's life. This was my kitchen. Marilyn's chair was still pushed in at the same angle it had been the morning she collapsed. There was still a mug in the sink because I hadn't been able to touch anything without feeling like I was erasing her. And these three people were asking me to sign my name out of my own home like I was canceling a subscription. My hand started to lift, not toward the pen, toward the stack of papers. I pushed them back across the table. "Leave it," I said. Derek's jaw tightened for half a second before he fixed his face again. Tessa's eyes widened, surprised, almost offended. Grant's expression didn't change at all, but I saw the smallest flicker of interest, like a shark noticing movement. Derek stood up slowly, smoothing his suit jacket. "You should think carefully. We're trying to make this painless." Painless for who? Tessa rose too, collecting her purse with slow, deliberate motions. At the door, she turned back, and the softness drained out of her voice like someone pulled a plug. "Don't make this ugly, Jack." Then they were gone. The door clicked shut, and I stood there in the sudden silence, listening to my own breathing. My hands were shaking, not with rage, with embarrassment. Because I wasn't angry yet. I was embarrassed, and that was worse. It meant they'd gotten to me. It meant they'd picked the moment when I was slow, foggy, and hollow, and they'd moved fast. Grief makes you slow, and they came fast. I turned back toward the living room, toward the wreaths and the cards and the proof that my wife had existed. As I passed the coffee table, something slipped off the pile of condolence envelopes and hit the floor with a soft metallic click. A small key, plain, unlabeled, the kind of key you don't notice until you need it. I stared at it for a moment, then bent down and picked it up. It felt warm from the sunlight. Or maybe it just felt alive because everything else in the house suddenly felt like it belonged to the past. I slid it into my pocket without thinking. I didn't know what it opened. I only knew Marilyn had never kept useless things. Tom Rhea's office smelled like burnt coffee and old paper, two things you don't notice until your life depends on them. He'd been my attorney for years, not because I was rich, but because I was careful. Permits, property disputes, a boundary line issue once when a neighbor tried to claim 6 feet of my fence. Real problems, fixable ones. This was different. Tom shut my file, leaned back, and ran a hand down his face. "Jack, what they're doing is aggressive." I stared at the window behind him. Sacramento looked normal outside. Traffic lights, people with lunch bags, a world that didn't care my wife was gone. "They say I have 30 days, I said. Tom shook his head. "They can say whatever they want. You're the surviving spouse. We can file to contest. We can petition for temporary orders to keep you in the house while probate sorts itself out. Force them to negotiate." That was the logical road. The road every decent person wanted me to take. The road that sounded like justice. I looked at Tom. "How long?" He didn't answer right away, and that pause told me everything. "Months," he said finally. "Maybe a year, depending on how hard they push. If their lawyer is Grant Fielder, he'll push." A year. I did the math without moving my lips. Legal retainers, filing fees, delays. The way bills show up even when your heart is broken and your bed is empty. "What do I live on in the meantime?" I asked. "They already hinted they'll freeze accounts." Tom's mouth tightened. "We can fight that too." "Yeah," I said, "but fighting isn't free." I was 61. I wasn't afraid of work. I'd spent decades outdoors, boots in mud, measuring land that people thought was theirs just because they wanted it. But I was tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. I didn't want my last chapter to be a courtroom. I didn't want to die in litigation holding on to a house like it was a lifeboat. Tom leaned forward. "Jack, listen to me. They're counting on you being foggy. They're counting on you being alone." I tapped my finger against the arm of the chair. My pocket felt heavier than it should have. The key. I could still feel its shape through the fabric, like a small secret insisting it mattered. "Tom," I said, and my voice came out steady enough to surprise me. "Draft me a transfer." His eyebrows lifted. "A transfer?" "Give them what they want," I said. "The house, the land, everything." Tom stared at me like I'd asked him to light a match in his own office. "Jack, if you do that, you waive rights. You sign away leverage. You can't just hand them your life." "I know," I said. "Write it clean. Make sure I'm not responsible for anything after. No loose ends." Tom's face went pale in a different way, concern instead of shock. Why? I didn't have an answer I could prove. Not yet. All I had was a feeling that Derek and Tessa weren't acting like people who'd won fairly. They were acting like people who needed speed, like people who were afraid that if I had time, I'd find something. And I had the smallest piece of metal in my pocket that had fallen out of a condolence envelope, like Marilyn's hand reaching out of the grave. I need this done fast, I said, before they start getting creative. Tom held my gaze for a long moment, searching my face for the crack where grief should be spilling out. Then he nodded once. All right, he said quietly. I'll draft it, but I want you to hear me. Once you sign, there's no undo button. I hear you, I said. Just do it. When I got home, the house was still too quiet. The wreaths still too bright. The cards still stacked like unopened mail from another life. I walked past the living room and into Marilyn's office again, like it was the only room in the house that still belonged to her instead of to the future. I sat at her desk and opened the top drawer. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. I just needed to touch something that hadn't been contaminated by Derek's folder and Tessa's soft voice. Paper clips, sticky notes, a small bottle of hand lotion, receipts folded into squares. Then my fingers hit metal. Not the key in my pocket. Another key. This one was attached to a little plastic tag, the kind banks use. Worn, scuffed, ordinary. On the tag, in Marilyn's handwriting, neat, slanted, slightly right, were 4 words and a number. J Street, Box 214. Under it, tucked flat like she didn't want it seen at a glance, was a single strip of paper torn from a notepad. One line. If they come for the land, don't argue. Read what's inside first. I sat there for a long time with that note in my hand. Marilyn never left notes. She told you things to your face. She labeled pantry jars, not feelings. She didn't play games. That's how I knew it mattered. I drove to First National on J Street before my courage could evaporate. The bank lobby was quiet, carpeted, polished, the kind of place where people whisper even when they don't need to. The teller looked at me with the careful sympathy everyone had been wearing since Marilyn died. When I handed over my ID and the key, she didn't ask why I was there. She just nodded and called the manager. A few minutes later, a woman with silver hair and a calm voice led me through a door that clicked shut behind us and down into the vault. Cold air, concrete, rows and rows of steel boxes like teeth. Box 214, she said, reading the tag. Mrs. Mercer was very specific about access. My throat tightened. She was like that. The manager opened the compartment and placed the box in front of me in a small private room, then left without a word. I sat alone with a metal rectangle that suddenly felt heavier than it had any right to be. My hands didn't shake when I lifted the lid. Inside were documents neatly stacked, clipped together in Marilyn's exacting way. A copy of a living trust, dated recently, not the dusty, outdated paperwork Derek had waved around like a trophy. A stamped transfer on death deed, already recorded, official, clean, the kind of thing you couldn't bluff your way around. A folder labeled, in thick black marker, environmental. Another, title exceptions. And on top of everything else, a sealed envelope. No return address, no legal stamp. Just 4 words, in Marilyn's handwriting, written like a boundary line. Open after you decide to give it all. I stared at that envelope until my eyes burned. Because suddenly, it wasn't just a key. It was a plan. They wanted me rushed. Marilyn gave me a brake pedal. Derek invited me to dinner like he was doing me a favor. His text was polite and cold. Let's do this peacefully. Family dinner. I said yes. When people think they've won, they get sloppy. Their place in Granite Bay looked expensive in the way new money tries too hard. Fresh stonework, perfect landscaping, overreach. Tessa opened the door with a smile that never reached her eyes. Derek followed, all calm confidence. Grant Fielder was there too, posted near the dining room, like furniture with a law degree. Jack, Derek said, thank you for coming. Mom would want respect. We sat. Food arrived. Nobody mentioned Marilyn's name again. The whole room felt staged. Candles, soft music, the kind of warmth you buy at a store. I kept my hands flat on the table so nobody could mistake my control for weakness. Derek got to it. You spoke to your attorney. I did, I said. I gave them what they came for, in the tone they wanted. I'm not here to fight your mother's children, I said. I'm not interested in a year of court. Derek's shoulders dropped an inch. Grant's mouth curled into a thin, satisfied smile. That means a lot, Tessa whispered. Derek leaned forward. Then we can finalize by Friday. Of course, they wanted speed. Maybe, I said. Grant's eyes sharpened. Derek blinked. Maybe. I have a couple questions, I said, for clarity. Derek's smile held, but the skin around it tightened. Okay. I kept my voice mild. Why did you bring a will dated 2 years ago? For half a second, Derek froze. Just a flicker, then he recovered. That's the last version we were aware of. Right, I said. And why does the land's legal description look incomplete? Tessa frowned, playing confused. Grant shifted his weight. The calls don't close, I said. It reads like someone copied half the description and hoped nobody would check the record. Derek's jaw flexed once. You used to do surveying. I used to measure property lines, I said. Land doesn't care who raises their voice. It cares what's filed. Tessa changed tactics fast. Her eyes filled. Jack, please. Mom would hate this. She'd hate conflict. I didn't argue with her feelings. I asked a fact. Then why did you threaten me with 30 days? I said. Why did you bring an attorney to my kitchen the day after the funeral? Her tears paused. Just a beat. Then she pushed them back into place. We weren't threatening you. We were trying to be practical. Practical, I repeated. Grant finally spoke, smooth as oil. Mr. Mercer, if you're hunting technicalities, you're stepping back onto the path you said you didn't want. I'm hunting accuracy, I said. Silence sat between the plates. Then I placed one more pebble on the table. I found a key, I said. Derek's eyes snapped to Grant and back. Tessa's fork stopped. A key? She asked too quickly. A small one, I said. Fell out of a condolence envelope. Funny place for something important. Grant's smile disappeared. Derek leaned forward, voice suddenly careful. If you found something of Mom's, bring it to us. We'll take it to our attorney and handle it properly. No, I said. One syllable. Clean. Derek's face tightened. Excuse me. I'll bring it to court with my own lawyer, I said. If it matters, it goes on the record. Tessa tried again, softer. Jack, don't let outsiders... Outsiders, I said, quiet. I was her husband. The rest of dinner was polite noise. Derek watched me like a man watching a safe. Grant checked his phone twice. When I left, Derek walked me to my car. Friday, he said. Be there, pen in hand. I nodded. I'll be there. Halfway down the hill, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. I answered. Mr. Mercer, a woman said, calm and direct. This is Maya Patel. Your wife retained my office. You need to stop signing anything until we meet. Maya Patel's office wasn't downtown glass and marble. It sat above a corner bakery in Midtown, the kind of place with scuffed stairs and a faded directory in the lobby. No receptionist in heels, no framed yachts on the wall. Just a clean waiting room and the soft hum of someone doing actual work. Maya came out herself, mid-40s, sharp eyes, hair pulled back like she didn't have time for nonsense. Jack Mercer, she asked. That's me. She didn't shake my hand like a politician. She shook it like a professional. Come in, she said. And before you say anything, Marilyn planned for exactly this scenario. That sentence hit harder than any threat Derek had made. Inside her office, she set a slim file on the desk, then slid a photo toward me. Marilyn in a blazer, standing beside Maya in this same room, smiling like she'd just solved something. She came to me 8 months ago, Maya said. Not to change everything, to make sure what she already built couldn't be stolen. I kept my voice level. Her kids say they have a will. Maya nodded once like she'd heard this line 1,000 times. They have something, not what matters. She leaned forward. Did you find a safety deposit key? I didn't answer right away. I didn't trust myself to. I did, I said. Good narrated, she replied, because what's in that box is the map, and what's in that envelope is the timing. I felt the sealed letter in my jacket pocket, the one that said, open after you decide to give it all. Maya held out her hand. May I? I hesitated, then I placed it on her desk. Open it, she said. My thumb slid under the flap. The paper inside smelled faintly like Marilyn's perfume. Clean. Citrus. The kind she wore to meetings when she wanted to feel in control. The handwriting was hers. Neat, direct, no drama. Jack, if you're reading this, they came fast. I'm sorry I couldn't make you a promise that would stop the pain. I can only leave you a plan that keeps it from becoming a cage. Derek and Tessa started pressuring me the moment the doctors used the word decline. They wanted me to simplify. They wanted me to sign while I was tired. They brought Grant to my bedside twice. He smiled. He called it housekeeping. Derek called it protecting the bloodline. Tessa cried and said she was scared for her future. They weren't scared. They were hungry. If you fight, they'll delay and drain you. They'll turn you into a headline. Greedy husband versus grieving children. They'll freeze accounts, drag probate, and make you pay for every day you stay standing. If you give, they'll sign their own consequences. They don't want the house. They want the land. The land is the trap. Read everything in the box before you do anything. Then call Maya. She knows what I built and why. I love you. Don't argue, don't beg, don't break. Marilyn. I finished and sat back, my throat tight, but my spine straight. Maya didn't let the silence stretch into sentiment. She tapped the file on her desk. Now we talk facts, she said. She opened the folder labeled environmental and slid the first page toward me. It wasn't legal poetry. It was county paperwork. Dry, unforgiving, true. This parcel, she said, pointing to a highlighted section, was part of an old agricultural operation decades ago. Pesticide storage, unsealed drums. There was a cleanup order issued years back. It was never completed. I stared at the page. I've never seen any of this. You weren't supposed to, Maya said. If you search by address, you see a pretty piece of land. If you search by parcel history, you see the body. She flipped to another document. And there's more. 2 abandoned wells. The county requires proper decommissioning. And an easement, meaning the county can access the property for remediation if it becomes necessary. Okay, I said slowly. So it needs work. Maya shook her head. Not work, liability. She slid over the title exceptions folder. This is the part Derek and Grant are counting on you not understanding. Obligations like this run with the land. Whoever owns it inherits the duty, the bills, the compliance timeline. I stared at the stack of papers like it was a hole opening under my chair. Marilyn knew they would come for it, Maya continued, so she didn't hide the land. She weaponized the truth around it. By doing what? Maya pulled out a document and placed it on the desk like a final card in a quiet game. Assumption and indemnity agreement. This, she said, is what makes their hands stay off your throat. She explained it cleanly, no theatrics. If Derek and Tessa accept the land through transfer, they assume all environmental and compliance obligations, and they indemnify you, meaning they can't turn around later and claim you tricked them or force you to pay. I swallowed. How much? Maya didn't blink. Enough to make their lawyer lose color. She leaned back, watching me. I'm not talking about a few $1,000s. I'm talking about remediation, well closure, potential soil testing, possible civil penalties if deadlines are missed. 7 figures is not unrealistic. 7 figures. That's what Derek and Tessa wanted so badly. They weren't coming for a memory. They were coming for a bomb wrapped in a ribbon. Maya slid another page forward. Marilyn also documented their pressure campaign. I looked up. Documented how? Maya tapped a smaller envelope inside the file. A sealed recording. She instructed it only be introduced if they contested or tried to smear you publicly. Think of it as a fire extinguisher behind glass. My jaw tightened. So I don't need revenge. No, Maya said. You need signatures. She nodded toward a stack of papers she'd already prepared, clipped and tabbed with precision. Here's what we do, she said. We give them what they asked for, on paper. The deed transfer, the estate assignments. Clean, boring, official. She slid the next set closer. And here's what they won't read closely because they'll be smiling. The assumption and indemnity. The waiver, a strict no-contact clause, and a provision that if they dispute anything afterward, the sealed recording becomes part of the record. I breathed out slowly, feeling something I hadn't felt since Marilyn's funeral. Not joy, not rage, control. Maya watched my face. They wanted you desperate. Marilyn wanted you calm. My phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Derek. Final hearing Friday. Be there. Bring your pen. I stared at it, then set the phone down without replying. Maya's voice stayed even. You'll go. You'll bring your pen. You'll sign. And then, I asked. Maya's eyes were steady. And then Grant Fielder will read the last page out loud. I looked at the stack again. The map, the trap, the clean ending. Marilyn had known exactly who her children were. And she'd left me the kind of power that didn't require shouting. Just paper. Just timing. Just their signatures. Friday morning, the courthouse felt like a refrigerator. Not physically, just emotionally. Cold fluorescent light. Hard floors. People speaking in low voices like they were afraid of waking something up. I'd been in courtrooms before for small civil matters. Fence disputes, easements, a contractor case. Those had always felt like paperwork with consequences. This felt like a funeral with chairs. The hallway smelled like copier toner and cheap hand sanitizer. A bailiff's shoes clicked down the corridor. Somewhere behind a door, someone was crying quietly, the way people cry when they don't want strangers to see. I sat on a wooden bench and kept my hands folded. Maya sat beside me with a thin folder and calm eyes, like she'd already walked through this ending in her head. Across the hall, Derek and Tessa arrived with Grant. They didn't look like mourners. They looked like a team closing a deal. Derek wore a navy suit this time, not black. Subtle signal, today wasn't about grief. It was about control. Tessa smiled at someone she didn't know, bright and practiced. Grant carried his portfolio like a trophy. When Derek saw me, he actually relaxed. He gave me a nod that said, "Good. You came to do the right thing." Grant's smile flicked toward Maya, small, dismissive, and then back to me. "Mr. Mercer," he said, "the way you address a man you plan to finish. We were called in within 15 minutes. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling worn smooth by years of elbows. The judge's bench elevated just enough to remind everyone who mattered. The air was dry, and every sound carried. The scrape of a chair, the snap of a binder ring, the rustle of legal paper. Derek and Tessa sat at the table on the right, Grant between them, leaning back like he owned the room. Maya and I sat on the left. The judge came in. Everyone stood. Everyone sat. The clerk called the case, and just like that, my marriage was reduced to a file number. Grant rose first, voice confident. "Your Honor, we're here to finalize a transfer and resolve any dispute regarding the estate. Mr. Mercer has agreed to sign the necessary documents today." He said it like a victory lap. The judge looked at me. "Mr. Mercer, is that accurate?" I stood. My knees felt steady. My throat did not. "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "I'm here to sign." Derek's smile widened. Tessa's eyes softened. Performative mercy. Grant's pen hovered, ready. Grant turned slightly toward me, lowering his voice just enough to sound reasonable. "Mr. Mercer, you understand you're waiving claims to the primary residence and the land parcel. You understand you'll have no further rights to contest." I met his gaze and kept my tone flat. "I understand I'm giving them what they asked for." Grant nodded once, satisfied, and slid the first set of papers toward me. The top page was exactly what they demanded. Estate assignment, property transfer language, all the clean, obvious stuff. A pen was placed in my hand like a ritual object. I signed. 1 page, 2-3. The sound of my pen on paper felt too loud in that room. When I finished, Derek leaned back, finally breathing, like a man who'd been holding it for days. Tessa's smile turned almost radiant. Her hand found Derek's under the table. Grant collected the signed pages and stacked them neatly, already preparing to move on to the next step like this was routine. Then Maya stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't posture. She simply placed a second clipped packet on the table in front of Grant. "Your Honor," she said, "we have supplemental transfer language attached to the deed and assignment. For clarity and the record, we request it be read into the record as part of the final agreement." Grant's eyes narrowed slightly. He took the packet, flipped the cover page, and gave a short, amused breath through his nose. "Assumption language," he said, as if it were a nuisance. "This is unnecessary." Maya didn't blink. "It's necessary." The judge's expression didn't change. "Mr. Fielder, read it." Grant's smile held as he lifted the document. He began to read. At first, it was normal, dry legal phrasing. He read quickly, the way lawyers do when they expect boredom to be on their side. Then he slowed. His eyes moved back to a line he'd just passed, like his brain refused to accept what it saw. He cleared his throat once, and the color started to drain from his face. I watched it happen in stages, confident pink to pale to something almost gray. His lips parted slightly. The courtroom was silent except for the faint scratch of the court reporter's keys. Grant read again, this time slower, more careful, as if mispronouncing a word could change its meaning. "The transferees, Derek Hale and Tessa Hale, hereby assume full responsibility for all remediation obligations, compliance orders, and environmental corrective actions associated with parcel," he swallowed, "including but not limited to soil testing, well decommissioning, and any required cleanup under county and state directives, estimated between $1,300,000 and $1,900,000. Tessa's smile flickered. Derek's jaw tightened, but he kept his face still. Grant continued, voice now rougher, "and further agree to indemnify and hold harmless Jack Mercer in perpetuity from any and all claims, liabilities, costs, penalties, or future actions arising from said parcel and associated title exceptions." Derek's head turned slightly, sharp, Like a dog hearing a sound it didn't like, Grant kept going because he had no choice. And acknowledge that any sale, transfer, encumbrance, or attempt to collateralize the parcel accelerates the compliance timeline and does not relieve transferees of obligation. Tessa's hand went to her mouth. Grant's eyes flicked up to the judge, then back down. His voice dropped another half octave. And by execution of this agreement, transferees waive all rights to initiate civil action against Jack Mercer related to the estate, including allegations of misrepresentation or undue influence. He hesitated at the next paragraph. I could see him deciding whether to pretend it wasn't there. The judge's voice cut through. Continue. Grant read it. In the event transferees dispute this agreement or attempt to void the transfer, the estate reserves the right to file supplementary documentation, including a sealed recording and sworn statement, into the court record. The courtroom didn't explode. Nobody shouted. But something broke. It was the sound of Derek's control slipping, the sound of Tessa's performance collapsing. Derek stood halfway, then sat back down like his legs didn't trust him. "This is," he started, voice sharp. "This is predatory. I didn't move. I didn't smile. I just said calmly, 'You brought predators to my door first.'" Tessa's eyes filled fast. Real or not, it didn't matter now. "We didn't know," she choked. "We didn't know any of that." Maya's voice was level. "Your signatures say you do." Grant put the papers down like they were hot. "Your Honor," he said quickly, trying to recover the room, "my clients have not had adequate time to review these supplemental obligations. This is an ambush." Maya didn't argue. She just looked at Derek and Tessa. "Then you have a choice," she said. "Right now." The judge's gaze moved to Maya. "Explain." Maya spoke like she was reading a menu. "They can accept the estate exactly as demanded, house and land, with the attached obligations and indemnity. Or they can walk away. No transfer, no house, no land." Derek's eyes snapped to me. "You can't—" I cut in, still quiet. "Yes, I can." Maya added the part that made Grant's hands tighten on the table edge. "And if they walk away, and then attempt to contest or smear Mr. Mercer publicly, the sealed recording becomes part of the record." Tessa whispered, "What recording?" Derek's voice went thin. "What did she record?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The judge looked at Grant. "Counsel, do your clients accept the agreement as signed?" Grant leaned toward Derek and Tessa, whispering hard. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the math on Derek's face. Debt, liability, reputation, the possibility of something sealed becoming public. Tessa's tears fell onto her lap. Then Derek straightened, jaw clenched so tight the muscle jumped. "We accept," he said through his teeth. Grant's pen shook slightly when he made the final notations. The smiles were gone like they'd never existed. As we stood to leave, Derek stared at me with a look that tried to be hatred, but landed closer to fear. I held his eyes and gave him the only ending that fit. "You wanted bloodline," I said. "Congratulations. You got the land and everything buried in it." 2 months later, I wasn't in that house anymore. Not because Derek and Tessa won, and not because I ran. I moved because I didn't want to sleep in a place that had become a battlefield. I bought a smaller place on the other side of town. Quiet street, 1-car garage, a little patch of yard I could actually take care of without thinking about property lines. The first night there, I made coffee the way Marilyn liked it, too strong, and I sat in silence that felt clean instead of empty. Word traveled fast, even when nobody says your name out loud. Derek and Tessa tried to refinance the land. They couldn't. They tried to sell it. The disclosures scared buyers off. The county sent letters, deadlines, testing, compliance. When they called Grant, he stopped returning messages. Lawyers love wins. They hate mines. And then Maya showed me the last part Marilyn left, her real gift. Not the trap, the protection. A small fund already set up in my name, seeded with money she'd moved quietly while she was still alive. The paperwork was flawless. The purpose was clear: estate literacy, legal clinics, and basic financial education for people who get cornered by family at their weakest. Marilyn didn't just keep me from being erased. She turned what happened into a warning sign for others. Here's what I learned, and I'll say it as plain as I can. Grief makes you slow. Paper makes you powerful. Don't win loud, win clean. Now tell me, what city are you watching from? And if someone tried to erase you right after the funeral, what would you do?